16-year-old Emily was blind but fearless, walking through her neighborhood every day. She never expected the cruel HOA president Margaret to attack her with a spiked belt just for accidentally stepping on grass. But Emily's FBI agent father would make sure Margaret paid the ultimate price for hurting his daughter. Before watching full story, comment below from where you watching. Also like and subscribe for more stories. In the small town of Willow Creek, there was a neighborhood called Willow Grove. It was a quiet place with clean streets and pretty houses. Every lawn was green and cut perfectly. Every mailbox was painted the right color. This was because of one person, Margaret Voss. Margaret was the president of the Homeowners Association, or HOA. She was a tall woman with cold eyes and a mean voice. She made sure everyone followed every rule, no matter how small. If someone's grass was too long, Margaret would send them an angry letter. If someone painted their door the wrong color, Margaret would make them pay a big fine. People were scared of her. Margaret had one special thing she always wore, a black leather belt with sharp metal spikes. She said it was just for fashion, but it looked scary. When she walked around the neighborhood, the spikes would catch the sunlight and shine. Kids would hide when they saw her coming. Emily Carter lived in Willow Grove with her father, Daniel. Emily was 16 years old and had been blind since she was born. But being blind didn't stop Emily from being happy. She loved music and could play the piano beautifully. When she played, it sounded like magic. Her fingers moved across the keys like they knew exactly where to go. Emily used a white cane to help her walk around. She knew every street in Willow Grove by heart. She could tell where she was just by the sounds, the way her cane tapped on different sidewalks, the sound of cars, or the birds singing in different trees. Emily's father, Daniel, was an FBI agent. He was a kind man who loved his daughter very much. He had raised Emily by himself since her mother died when Emily was little. Daniel taught Emily to be strong and independent. He was proud that Emily could take care of herself and wasn't afraid to go places alone. Every day after school, Emily would walk to the community park. She loved sitting on the bench there and listening to the world around her. She could hear children playing, dogs barking, and birds singing in the trees. It made her feel peaceful and happy. On a sunny Thursday afternoon, Emily was walking home from the park as usual. She was thinking about a new song she wanted to learn on the piano. Her cane tapped along the sidewalk, keeping her safe and on the right path. But as Emily walked, she didn't notice that she had stepped slightly off the sidewalk. Her foot touched the edge of Mrs. Larson's lawn, leaving a small footprint in the soft grass. It was a tiny mistake that anyone could make, but in Willow Grove, even tiny mistakes were big problems. Margaret Voss was driving by in her big black SUV when she saw Emily's foot on the lawn. Margaret's face turned red with anger. She slammed on her brakes so hard that the car made a loud screeching sound. She jumped out of the car and marched toward Emily, her spiked belt shining in the sun. "Hey you!" Margaret shouted in a loud, mean voice. "What do you think you're doing?" Emily stopped walking. She was confused and a little scared. "I'm sorry, ma'am. Is something wrong?" "You're walking on Mrs. Larson's lawn," Margaret yelled. "Don't you know the rules? No one is allowed to step on other people's grass." Emily's face turned red with embarrassment. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know I stepped on the grass. I can't see where I'm walking." Margaret looked at Emily's white cane and realized Emily was blind. But instead of feeling sorry, Margaret became even angrier. "I don't care if you can't see. Rules are rules. Everyone in this neighborhood has to follow them." By now, some neighbors had heard the shouting. They looked out their windows to see what was happening. Mrs. Thompson from next door came out on her porch. Mr. Patel stopped working in his garden to watch. But no one said anything. They were all too scared of Margaret. Emily just wanted to go home. "I'm really sorry," she said again. "I'll be more careful. I promise." She started to walk away, but Margaret grabbed her arm and pulled her back. Emily almost fell down, and her cane clattered on the sidewalk. "You're not going anywhere until you learn your lesson," Margaret said in a cold voice. She unbuckled her spiked belt and held it in her hand. The metal spikes looked sharp and dangerous. Emily couldn't see the belt, but she could hear the sound of the buckle and knew something bad was about to happen. "Please," she said, her voice shaking. "I said I was sorry." But Margaret didn't listen. She raised the belt high in the air and brought it down hard on Emily's arm. The sharp spikes cut into Emily's skin, and she screamed in pain and surprise. "Stop. Please stop." Emily cried, but Margaret hit her again, this time on her shoulder. Blood started to show through Emily's white shirt. The neighbors watching couldn't believe what they were seeing. Mrs. Thompson put her hand over her mouth in shock. Mr. Patel took a step forward like he wanted to help, but then stopped. They were all too afraid of what Margaret might do to them. Margaret hit Emily one more time before she finally stopped. She was breathing hard and looked satisfied with herself. "Maybe now you'll remember to follow the rules," she said. She put her belt back on and walked back to her car like nothing had happened. Emily fell to her knees on the sidewalk. She was crying hard and holding her hurt arm. Blood was dripping from the cuts the spikes had made. She felt around on the ground for her cane, but she was shaking so much she couldn't find it. Mrs. Thompson couldn't watch anymore. She ran over to Emily and knelt down beside her. "Oh, honey, are you okay?" she asked, even though she could see Emily was definitely not okay. Mrs. Thompson found Emily's cane and helped her stand up. Emily was still crying and could barely walk. "Let me take you home," Mrs. Thompson said gently. She put her arm around Emily's good shoulder and walked with her slowly down the street. When they got to Emily's house, Mrs. Thompson knocked on the door. Daniel opened it with a smile, expecting to see Emily coming home from her walk. But when he saw his daughter covered in blood and crying, his face went white. "Emily, what happened?" He pulled his daughter into his arms, being careful not to touch her hurt arm and shoulder. Mrs. Thompson's voice was shaking as she told Daniel what she had seen. "It was Margaret Voss. She hit Emily with that belt of hers. The one with the spikes. Emily just stepped on some grass by accident." Daniel felt angrier than he had ever felt in his life. His hands were shaking as he helped Emily into the house. As an FBI agent, he had seen many terrible things, but nothing had ever made him this angry. He sat Emily down in the kitchen and carefully looked at her injuries. The spikes had made deep cuts in her arm and shoulder. Her shirt was torn and bloody. Emily was still crying, not just from the pain, but from the shock and embarrassment of what had happened. "Dad," Emily said through her tears, "I didn't mean to step on the grass. I couldn't see it." "I know, sweetheart," Daniel said, trying to keep his voice calm. "This isn't your fault." "Not at all." Daniel cleaned Emily's cuts and put bandages on them. He gave her some medicine for the pain and tucked her into bed. "Try to get some sleep," he said. "Everything is going to be okay." But Daniel knew everything was not okay. Someone had hurt his daughter and he was going to make sure they paid for it. After Emily fell asleep, Daniel sat at his kitchen table with his laptop. He was still wearing his FBI badge from work, and now he was going to use his job to get justice for Emily. First, he called his partner, Agent Sarah Miller. Sarah had worked with Daniel for 5 years and they trusted each other completely. "Sarah, I need your help with something personal," Daniel said. "The HOA president in my neighborhood just assaulted Emily." "What? Someone hurt Emily?" Sarah couldn't believe it. She had met Emily several times and thought she was a sweet kid. "Tell me what happened." Daniel explained everything while looking at photos he had taken of Emily's injuries. "I need you to run a background check on Margaret Voss. I want to know everything about her." "Of course," Sarah said. "I'll start right away." "And Dan? We're going to get this woman." Next, Daniel called the local police to file a report. But when he talked to the desk sergeant, he could tell they weren't taking it seriously. "Well, Mr. Carter," the sergeant said, "HOA disputes can get heated. Are you sure your daughter didn't provoke Mrs. Voss somehow?" Daniel felt his anger rising again. "My daughter is blind. She accidentally stepped on some grass. That's not provocation for assault with a weapon." "We'll look into it," the sergeant said, but Daniel could tell he didn't really mean it. Daniel realized he would have to build the case himself. He had done investigations before, but never when it was personal. He had to be extra careful to do everything right. The next morning, Daniel went to talk to the neighbors who had seen what happened. First, he visited Mrs. Thompson. Mrs. Thompson was watering her flowers when Daniel knocked. "Oh, Daniel," she said. "How is Emily feeling?" "She's better, thank you," Daniel said. "I need to ask you about yesterday. Will you tell me exactly what you saw?" Mrs. Thompson looked nervous. "I don't want to cause trouble with Margaret. She could make life difficult for me." Daniel understood her fear, but he also needed her help. "Emily is just a child, Mrs. Thompson. What Margaret did was wrong. I need witnesses to make sure it doesn't happen again." Mrs. Thompson thought for a moment, then nodded. "You're right. I saw everything." Margaret yelled at Emily, then grabbed her and hit her with that terrible belt. Emily was just trying to apologize. "Would you be willing to give an official statement?" Daniel asked. "For Emily, yes. That poor girl didn't deserve what happened to her." Daniel thanked Mrs. Thompson and went to talk to other neighbors. Mr. Patel was working in his garage when Daniel found him. "I saw what happened to your daughter," Mr. Patel said before Daniel could even ask. It was wrong. Very wrong. Will you help me make sure Margaret faces consequences? Daniel asked. Mr. Patel looked around nervously. Margaret fined me $500 last month because I left my trash can out one extra day. She said if I caused any more problems she would try to have me kicked out of the neighborhood. She can't do that, Daniel said. And what she did to Emily was illegal. Mr. Patel thought about it. My daughter is the same age as Emily. If someone hurt her like that. He nodded. Yes, I'll help. Daniel talked to several other neighbors. Mrs. Garcia told him that Margaret had threatened to put a lien on her house because she planted roses without asking permission first. Mr. Johnson said Margaret had tried to fine him for having a small chip in his driveway. Slowly, Daniel was building a picture of Margaret as someone who abused her power and bullied people in the neighborhood. That evening, Sarah called Daniel back with information about Margaret's background. This woman has a history, Dan, Sarah said. She's been the president of HOAs in 3 different neighborhoods over the past 10 years. In each place, there were complaints about her being too strict and mean to residents. Any criminal charges? Daniel asked. No convictions, but there were 2 police reports filed against her in her previous neighborhood. One family said she keyed their car after they complained about her at an HOA meeting. Another family said she killed their pet cat, but they couldn't prove it. Daniel felt sick. So she's done this kind of thing before. It looks like it. And Dan, there's something else. She was fired from her job at a property management company for being abusive to tenants. This woman has a pattern of using whatever little bit of power she has to hurt people. This information made Daniel even more determined to stop Margaret. She had been bullying people for years, and now she had crossed the line by hurting a child. Daniel spent the next few days gathering evidence. He took detailed photos of Emily's injuries and had a doctor examine her to document the damage. The doctor was shocked when he heard what had happened. These are serious injuries, the doctor said. The spikes on this belt could have hit an artery or caused permanent damage. This child is lucky. Daniel also found out that Mr. Patel had security cameras on his house. When they checked the footage, they found something incredible. The whole incident with Emily had been recorded. The video was clear and showed everything. Margaret yelling at Emily, grabbing her and hitting her with the spiked belt. It showed Emily crying and falling down, and all the neighbors watching but being too scared to help. This is perfect evidence, Daniel told Sarah when he showed her the video. No jury in the world would believe Margaret's story after seeing this. Daniel also discovered that Margaret had been stealing money from the HOA. He found records showing that she had been charging residents for unnecessary repairs and keeping the extra money for herself. Over 3 years, she had stolen almost $50,000. Margaret had scheduled an HOA meeting for the following Wednesday. Daniel decided to attend, not as an FBI agent, but as a concerned resident and father. The meeting was held in the community center. About 30 residents were there, all sitting quietly while Margaret stood at the front with her spiked belt gleaming under the lights. Margaret talked about new rules she wanted to add. No children playing in front yards after 6 p.m. No cars parked in driveways for more than 4 hours during the day. A $200 fine for any lawn that wasn't cut every week. The residents looked unhappy but didn't say anything. They were all too scared of Margaret to speak up. But Emily didn't feel like a hero. She felt like a normal teenager who had been through something difficult and survived. I just want to help other kids who might go through what I went through, Emily told the reporter. No one should have to face bullies alone. In prison, Margaret had a lot of time to think about what she had done. At first, she was still angry and insisted she had been right to punish Emily. But as months passed, she began to realize how wrong she had been. Margaret started attending anger management classes in prison. She also met with a counselor who helped her understand why she had enjoyed having power over other people. After 2 years in prison, Margaret wrote a letter to Emily and Daniel, apologizing for what she had done. She didn't ask for forgiveness, she just wanted them to know that she finally understood how much she had hurt them. Daniel showed the letter to Emily, who read it with her fingers using Braille. I'm glad she finally understands, Emily said. Maybe she won't hurt anyone else when she gets out of prison. 5 years later, Willow Grove was still a peaceful, happy neighborhood. Emily had graduated from high school with honors and was studying music therapy in college. She wanted to help people heal from trauma through music. Daniel had been promoted at the FBI and was now in charge of investigating crimes against children. Emily's case had inspired him to focus on protecting kids who couldn't protect themselves. Mrs. Thompson was still the HOA president, and under her leadership, Willow Grove had become known as the friendliest neighborhood in Willow Creek. Property values had actually gone up because people wanted to live in a place where neighbors cared about each other. The spiked belt that Margaret had used to hurt Emily was destroyed after the trial. Daniel made sure of that. He didn't want that weapon to ever hurt anyone else. Emily's story became a lesson for the whole town about standing up to bullies and protecting those who can't protect themselves. The community center where Margaret used to hold her harsh HOA meetings now had a plaque dedicated to Emily's courage. Local schools invited Emily to speak to students about dealing with bullies and not being afraid to ask for help when someone hurts you. The most important thing, Emily would tell the students, is to remember that being different doesn't make you less valuable. I'm blind, but that doesn't mean people have the right to hurt me. And if someone does hurt you, tell a trusted adult. Don't suffer alone. Justice for Emily wasn't just about punishing Margaret Voss. It was about creating a community where everyone felt safe and valued, regardless of their differences. Emily learned that she was stronger than she had ever imagined. Daniel learned that sometimes the most important cases are the personal ones. And the residents of Willow Grove learned that they didn't have to live in fear of bullies. Margaret's reign of terror was over, and in its place grew a community built on kindness, understanding and respect for all people, including a brave blind girl named Emily who refused to let a bully define her life. The neighborhood that had once been ruled by fear became a place of hope, proving that justice, love and courage will always triumph over cruelty and hatred. Emily continued to play piano, her music now carrying the strength of someone who had faced darkness and chosen light. And in Willow Grove, every time someone heard her playing, they were reminded that even the smallest person can make the biggest difference when they stand up for what's right.